How far am I willing to go to make my dream come true? Through hell and back. That's what I kept telling myself. Through hell and back. I'd been out of a job for 6 months. At first I told myself it was just a rough patch. Everyone goes through them, right? I sent out resumes like flares into the dark. No replies, no interviews, just the occasional automated rejection that landed in my inbox like a death knell. As the weeks crawled by, then months, the silence took on weight. Heavier, meaner. Every resume I sent felt smaller than the last. Less me, more hollow. I'd come out of film school starry-eyed and full of fire, convinced I was destined for something bigger. I wanted to do something that mattered, something people would remember. I wanted to carve my name into the bones of cinema history. Movies were always more than entertainment to me. They were sacred. I grew up on the floor in front of a flickering TV, curled up next to my brother with a blanket and a bowl of popcorn too big for our arms. Silly movies at first, but when I got older, my brother introduced me to the world of true cinema, as he used to put it. Sunday matinees turned into nighttime marathons. Spielberg, Carpenter, Kubrick, Jarmusch, even the weird Lynch stuff that made us laugh before it started to terrify us. After my brother died, I clung to film even harder. Editing, writing, and shooting short scenes with borrowed gear. Grief turned into a brightly burning drive. It felt like the only way to keep him with me was by chasing the dreams we used to share in the dark. But dreams are expensive, and idealism only pays in heartache. Instead, I found myself cutting together strangers' wedding reels for cash. I must have watched hours of champagne toasts and choreographed dances flicker before me on the screen, while feeling like a small piece of me died with every excruciatingly mundane product delivered. By month 3 of unemployment, I was bleeding savings. By month 6, I was pawning gear like heirlooms. My LED kit, my camera dolly, even the Super 8 I promised myself I'd keep forever. That one hurt the most. It was the camera I used to shoot my first home movie with Jeremy, my brother, the one where we'd made our backyard look like the end of the world. I'd insisted on a zombie apocalypse setting. That reel's probably in a box somewhere now. Dusty, forgotten, kind of how I started to feel. Eventually, I stopped hearing back from job applications altogether, not even rejections, just that sickly void of nothing, the kind of silence that feels personal. I wasn't a filmmaker anymore. I was someone who used to talk about film the way other people talk about religion. It seemed, to my heart's despair, I just wasn't cut out for the one thing I yearned the most for. And then I found it. A listing buried deep in a job site I didn't even remember bookmarking. Every listing on the site was for something creative. Screenwriters, editors, set designers, concept artists, and actors. Not all the jobs were posted by companies. Some were just names. Private people, vague, sometimes poetic, sometimes deranged and odd, seeking sculptor of memory. Actor wanted must be comfortable with going the extra mile. Sound designer needed for memory reenactment, unpaid. Most of the listings read like either performance art or elaborate pranks, like they'd been written by lunatics or theater kids on absinthe. The listing that caught my eye simply read, creative assistant wanted at newly started film company. No experience necessary. Must be willing to go the distance for true art. I stared at the screen for longer than I'd like to admit. It was a small local movie company that I had never heard about. The odd, because I thought I knew just about everything there was to know about the local scene. That line, quote, go the distance for true art, end quote, it clung to something deep in me. It was pompous, dramatic, and weirdly honest. I almost clicked away. I hovered over the tab, ready to close it out, look for another barista job I wouldn't get called back for. But then I thought about all the nights I'd sat alone, watching Tarkovsky films with frozen pizza and debt notices, all the half-finished screenplays on my hard drive no one would ever read. So I clicked apply. I gave it my all on this, one last prayer into the void. I made a personal resume and a motivated application that went into details about my passion for cinema, about my willingness to go the distance for true art, whatever that meant. Then I hit send. 2 days later, I got a reply. It was just one line, quote, we'd like to meet you, end quote. Attached an address to a warehouse space on the edge of town down by the docks. Intrigued by the sheer uncanniness of it all, I decided to give it a try. The building didn't look like a studio, not from the outside. More like an abandoned office block tucked away in shuttered hardware store and old coin laundry. The kind of place you'd expect to find leaking pipes, flickering lights, and mice, not filmmakers. I stepped inside and the air hit me immediately. It was cold and damp, tinged with something chemical and metallic, like blood and copper. The lobby was mostly empty, save for a dead plant in the corner and a buzzing overhead light that looked like it might shake loose from the ceiling at any second. A woman in all black, slim, pale, clipboard clutched tight to her chest, emerged from behind a narrow door without making a sound. Her smile was polite, but her eyes weren't smiling. "Follow me," she said. The hallway she led me down was too quiet. Carpet muffled every step. Somewhere deep in the building I thought I heard someone singing. Slow, off-key, and childlike. But the sound vanished as quickly as it came. She led me into a narrow room with a folding table and 3 chairs, one of which I was meant to take. 2 people already sat across from it, a man and a woman, late 40s maybe. Sharp clothes, hollow faces. They looked exactly how you'd expect indie film producers to look if someone had described them to a sculptor who'd never met a human being before. Everything about them was a little off. Their hair too perfect, their smiles too tight, their eyes too wide and wet, like they hadn't blinked, ever. "Thank you for coming," the man said. His voice was deep and slow, like he was choosing each word from a locked drawer. The woman nodded, and her intensely piercing eyes met mine. I felt a chill go through my body. Something about the way she looked at me felt off, as if she were staring straight through me. "We're not looking for experience, just conviction and dedication," she said. The questions started out mundane. What's your favorite film? What kind of stories do you want to tell? What directors inspire you? I answered the best I could, though I felt stupid halfway through. The questions weren't really for information. They were watching how I answered, not what I said, studying my mouth, my eyes, my posture. At times it felt like they were staring straight into my soul. Then the questions started to shift. Have you ever cried during a film? What scene? What did it take from you? Have you ever watched someone die? What color were their eyes at the end? Do you believe pain can be beautiful? I answered their odd questions as best as I could, trying not to let it throw me off. I wanted this, I really did. If nothing else, if I made something here, I could finally have something to show in my portfolio. Their voices never rose. The woman took notes in long, looping strokes. The man leaned in slightly every time I hesitated. I was sweating, but I couldn't tell if it was from heat or fear. Then came the question that finally lodged in my gut. What is the worst thing that ever happened to you? Silence followed. They both leaned back in unison, like snakes waiting for a heartbeat to falter. I stared down at my hands, contemplating whether to come up with a lie. I felt unspeakably uncomfortable, but their eyes, something in their eyes told me they'd know instantly if I started lying. I could feel it. Finally, my mouth opened and I told them about my brother, about his suicide, the guilt I felt. I was surprised by how many details I ended up going into, as if some floodgate had been opened that I couldn't close again. The woman didn't blink. The man smiled. Not kindly, but like he just tasted something sweet and sugary. His reaction appalled me and made me uncomfortable. "Thank you," the woman said softly. "You've shown us you're capable of truth. At Obscura Film, we work only with those who dare to be honest, even if it hurts, even if it goes beyond your comfort zone. Sharing something this painful with a bunch of strangers, that takes courage. And courage is what we need. The job is yours." Something about the way they listened, how they hung on every word, it stirred something in me. Unease, yes, but also curiosity. Maybe a darker impulse I didn't want to name. I ignored it and asked them a question that still puzzled me. About the job, what exactly am I expected to do? The listing wasn't very specific. The woman didn't flinch. Her eyes showed no emotion whatsoever. "You're expected to do exactly what is needed for true art to manifest. Nothing more, nothing less. If you need to direct, you direct. If you need to write, you write. If you need to act, you act. This is an opportunity for you to bring all your talents to the table, for you to grow into your full potential." I nodded politely, but that answer gave me little in the way of clarity. As I would come to find it, clarity wasn't something they were big on. My first day was the following Monday. I was nervous, but also excited. The warehouse looked different in daylight, less ominous somehow, like a stage set after the audience has gone home. But the moment I stepped inside, that illusion peeled away. The place was deeper than I remembered. Beyond the main hallway, the warehouse was split into corridors that made no architectural sense. One curved subtly, disorientating, and another led to a dead end that didn't appear to match the building's footprint from outside. The air smelled like dust, paint thinner, and something faintly metallic and sweet. People moved through the space, actors and staff, I assumed. However, none of them spoke to me. A woman in a moth-eaten wedding dress stood barefoot in a corner, weeping into her hands. I turned to see if a camera crew was nearby, but there was no one filming. In another room, I heard a guttural scream, raw and too long. When I stepped in, a young man sat cross-legged on the floor, laughing and crying at once, as though he couldn't remember how he was supposed to feel. No one stopped him. No one even looked concerned. I presumed he was simply rehearsing a scene. Props and costumes were scattered across open tables and racks. I passed a mannequin head painted entirely black with human teeth glued along the jawline. A giant papier-mâché bird costume hung from the ceiling like a hangman. One room was full of shoes, hundreds of mismatched shoes sorted by size and style, none of them looking like they'd ever been worn on camera. In the hallway outside the black box studio, I passed a door secured with a rusted padlock. Behind it, something thumped, slow and rhythmic, like someone pacing, or something heavier. I paused. The sound stopped. When I leaned in, I could swear I heard breathing, wet, deliberate, just on the other side of the door. Then, a sharp knock. Once. I backed away, fast. No one else reacted. A man walked by, wearing a clear plastic mask smeared with fake blood, holding a VHS tape labeled Dream Footage 6B. Before I could ask questions, one of the men from the interview approached, the one in the turtleneck. "You're here. Good. Welcome home. Please follow me." I barely had time to wonder over the welcome home line before he led me down a long corridor. He entered a small black box studio, minimal lighting, an ancient camera setup that looked like it had been pulled from a forgotten film set in 1950s Europe. In the center of the room stood a crude living room mock-up. Couch, lamp, cheap frame photos. It was fuzzy, but I felt like I had seen it before, like murky glimpses of an old, forgotten dream. It freaked me out. A young actor sat slumped in the middle, hands trembling, trying to get into character, I assume. The director looked at me. "You'll assist today." I blinked. Doing what? He handed me a script. It was 1 page long. Scene 4, the moment of loss. A young boy receives news that his older brother has hung himself. The man collapses. He screams and cries. He does not stop screaming. I felt my breath catch in my throat. This is exactly what I told you in the interview," I said. The man in the turtleneck nodded. "Yes, that's why we chose you for this scene." My mouth went dry. "You're using what I said, you..." "No," he interrupted, voice calm. "We're honoring it. This is what real art demands. Pain must be given shape, or it rots. You're the only one who can help us make this moment real. In this case, your memories are an asset, something you can use in the service of art. That makes it meaningful." I wanted to argue. I wanted to walk out, but I didn't. I needed this job. I needed something to matter again. So I helped. I gave notes. I coached the actor on how the grief hits in waves, how your body doesn't know what to do, how your hands twitch like they're searching for something to hold on to. And when he collapsed on the fake carpet, sobbing so hard his voice cracked, it felt real, too real. I watched the scene again and again as they ran takes. The sobbing, the silence, the scream. The scream never sounded quite the same, but they didn't want it to be perfect. They wanted it raw. When it was over, I felt hollowed out. On my way out, I passed a hallway where 2 of the crew whispered urgently in a language I didn't recognize. One of them noticed me and immediately stopped talking. He smiled too quickly. The other turned away and disappeared down a hallway marked Archive. Just another secret in a place that seemed to contain nothing but mysteries, I guessed. That night I lay awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling, playing the scene back in my head. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been taken from me, not something I had given willingly. But then I thought about the actor. His performance had been True. Maybe uncomfortably so. Maybe that was the point. Maybe they were right. Maybe turning my experience into something more was better than letting it rot inside. I told myself I'd go in again, tomorrow, just until I could find my footing again. Day 2 began earlier than expected. I arrived to find a note duct-taped on the inside of the front door. It read, in slanted handwriting, Studio 4. Be present, no distractions, only commitment. Today is Charlotte's Day. Studio 4 was farther into the building, tucked behind a corridor lined with black curtains and old reel canisters stacked like forgotten tombstones. I passed a man in a burlap sack mask who didn't acknowledge me. A woman walked barefoot down the hallway, whispering lines from King Lear to herself, bloody gauze wrapped around her hands. The air in Studio 4 was dense and hot, like someone had turned the vents off hours ago. 2 bright key lights illuminated a modest living room set. Cracked wallpaper, a threadbare couch, and old toys scattered across a stained carpet. In the middle stood a man in a wife-beater and slacks. He was red-faced, barrel-chested, and was pacing back and forth. In the corner sat a girl, early 20s, maybe younger. Her shoulders hunched, her eyes were hollow, her hair hung damp in the front of her face. Her breathing was shallow. As I entered, one of the men from my interview appeared beside me, smiling like we were about to start a magic show. He handed me a clipboard. "You're helping with this one," he said. "We want raw truth. No gloss, no barriers." I looked down at the notes. Scene objective, confrontation, daughter refuses to forgive, father escalates, real-time reaction, film until breaking point. It seemed straightforward enough, but I noticed that the woman playing the part of the daughter seemed unnaturally on edge, like she was breaking down already before the cameras had even started rolling. If she was getting into the role, she was quite an amazing actress. The man from the interview noticed my lingering and puzzled gaze. "Method," he said, with a glint in his eye that didn't quite fit his tone. "They don't break character, ever. They know the boundaries. They sign the waivers. They each live through this. An abused daughter, an abusive father. It has to be as real as it can get." As if on cue, the man turned and slapped the girl hard across the face. The sound cracked through the room like a whip. No way that was a fake slap. She didn't cry out, just flinched, swallowed the pain, and stared up at him with trembling defiance. I staggered forward. "Hey, what the hell?" The director I was supposed to assist caught me by the arm. "Do not interrupt," he hissed. "You'll ruin the take." That looked real. It was real. That's the point. I looked at the girl again. Her lip was bleeding, just a little. Her eyes flicked toward me. Was she pleading or acting? I didn't know anymore. "Pain," the director whispered. "It's how we dig down to the marrow. You said you were ready to go the distance, didn't you? We're all ready to bleed for art. If you're not, then maybe." I flinched. I desperately needed this. And besides, these actors could walk out any moment if they felt like it. They had signed up for this. And so had I. There was no way I was going back to editing people's wedding footage. They filmed the whole thing. Later, after the others had filtered out, some laughing like nothing had happened, others dead silent, I sat alone in the break room, a cup of coffee going cold in my hand. I hadn't taken a sip. The bitter smell made my stomach turn. That's when I saw her again, the actress from the scene. She moved past the doorway slowly, like she didn't want to be seen. Her face was turned slightly, but not enough to hide the faint swelling near her jawline. Or was it just shadow? She held her arms stiff, like it hurt to move. Her eyes caught mine for a split second, a flicker of doubt in her face, like she was trying to convince herself it had all been worth it. Like maybe, just maybe, the scene had cut deeper than she expected. Then she disappeared down the hall, leaving me alone with a silence that suddenly felt heavier. I began asking myself what exactly I'd walked into here. That was already more than I had expected. So many questions loomed, and along with it, dread for what the answer might be. But oddly enough, also a creeping curiosity. I wanted to stay, not just because I needed the job, but because I was starting to understand why they called it true art. And that realization intrigued me. I wanted to know more. I wanted to see how far they were willing to go. Maybe even how far I was willing to go myself. The third day, things got even weirder. The morning began with an all-hands meeting in the screening hall, though no films were shown. Rows of plastic chairs faced a low stage where the studio's executives eventually emerged. 3 of them I'd never seen before, and something about them didn't sit right. They looked wrong. Faces too smooth as if they'd been vacuum sealed in place. Skin waxy, almost artificial under the buzzing fluorescence. Their smiles were stiff and identical, too wide. Their eyes the same icy blue color, so icy blue they almost seemed white. They blinked too little, moved too slowly, like actors playing human beings for the first time, and just barely getting it right.
"Thank you for coming,"
said the one in the middle. His voice was oddly deep, deeper than what seemed possible for a human voice.
"We know some of you are tired, maybe even confused."
His smile never moved.
"But that's good,"
he continued.
"All beginnings are hard. Down is part of the process. Down means that we're near the edge of something beautiful, something meaningful. And the edge is where true art begins."
The others nodded in perfect rhythm, like marionettes sharing one brain.
"We ask for your trust. We ask that you keep giving yourselves to this work, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. In the end, every frame we capture will be proof that you mattered, that we mattered. This studio, you, will make history."
There was scattered applause, a few murmured affirmations. I clapped too, but my hands felt numb. I looked around, and it hit me. All of the people gathered here, I recognized the look in their eyes. I'd seen it in the mirror. Desperation. A yearning to belong somewhere, somewhere that mattered, somewhere that made them someone. Afterward, I was handed a manila folder with today's scene assignment. I flipped it open, and my breath caught in my throat. 1 page, sparse dialogue, 2 boys seated on a living room floor, a blanket fort, crayons, plates of grilled cheese sandwiches cut into dinosaur shapes. My stomach dropped. I remembered it. I must have been 10. My brother, Jeremy, was 15, older, cooler, already half-stepping into the world beyond me. But that day, none of that mattered. I'd been sick for days, curled on the couch under a fleece blanket, limbs aching, skin burning with fever, the kind of flu that makes the ceiling blur and the hours dissolve into static. Our parents were both at work, stretched thin and tired, but Jeremy stayed home. He said school could wait. He pulled the couch cushions to the floor and draped a blanket over 2 chairs, building a crooked little fort that glowed softly from within. He lined up a stack of dusty VHS tapes, The Iron Giant, Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, and told me we were having a film festival. Just us, sick day cinema. Then he disappeared into the kitchen. I could hear him clattering pans, muttering like a mad scientist. When he came back, he had a plastic plate in his hands. On it were 2 grilled cheese sandwiches, each cut messily and unmistakably into the shape of dinosaurs. He held it out like a sacred offering.
"Eat them fast,"
he said, eyes wide with mock seriousness,
"or they'll eat you first."
I laughed so hard I thought I'd puke. My head pounded, my throat burned, but for a few seconds, none of that mattered. It was perfect. A small, silly moment wrapped in warmth and grilled cheese grease and the safety only an older brother can give. That day became sacred in my memory, one of the few untouched by what came after, untouched by images of his dead frame hanging from the ceiling, by guilt and doubt, by his ever-burning absence. In that moment, Jeremy wasn't just my brother, he was the whole world. But the scene I held in my hands was not that memory. It wore its skin, but something was deeply, hideously wrong. The header at the top read, Int, Blanket Fort, Day, Rough Script, Room for Improv. Just like it had been, the couch cushions, the blanket canopy, the soft glow from a flashlight balanced in a plastic bucket, a plastic plate of grilled cheese sandwiches cut like dinosaurs. But then, older brother, 15, wide smile, as wide as you can. You have to eat all of them, you promised. Younger brother, 10. I don't want to, they look wrong. Older brother, guilting his younger brother, sadness in tone, like a betrayal has happened. This was the best I could do. Don't you like it? I made them just for you. All my love is in there. Stage direction. The younger boy hesitates. He picks up a sandwich, bites, a crunch, too sharp. He recoils. Blood spills from his mouth. Younger brother, muffled, panicking. It hurts. More blood. He opens the sandwich. It's filled with shards of glass. And then, older brother, 15. Dead eyes, no expression. Keep chewing. If you don't eat them fast, they will eat your soul. I could barely breathe. My eyes scanned further through the rest of the script as my stomach twisted in protest. It continued, coldly, precisely, describing how the boy tries to scream, but his tongue is already cut. How the brother sits back in the corner of the fort, watching, unblinking. Older brother continued. The story doesn't end until the mouth is quiet. I gripped the folder tighter, the paper warping under my fingers. I wanted to tear it apart, burn it, but I couldn't stop reading. This was sacred. This memory, one of the last pieces of my brother that hadn't been warped by loss. A day I'd kept locked in a quiet corner of my mind, too precious to speak aloud. And yet, here it was. Filtered, perverted. No one could have known. I'd never told anyone. As far as I can remember, certainly not them, but somehow they had found it. Even worse, they had twisted it into this abomination. I confronted one of the creative leads during break, the same man who'd asked me in the interview what the worst thing that ever happened to me was. He looked at me with wide, unblinking eyes, calm, reverent.
"We're not recreating your pain," he said. "We're giving it form, letting it breathe, so it can mean something more than just loss. Listen, I know this seems unconventional, but this is a meditation on how our memories are warped and turned into monstrous things when we process pain and loss. You must understand that on some level. You're such a creative force, so focused, you just have to let it out."
It already meant something. I can't direct this monstrosity. He didn't argue, just nodded slowly.
"You wouldn't be here if you didn't believe in what we're doing. Give it time. You'll understand."
I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Because part of me wanted to see how they'd do it, how far they'd go. That part of me terrified me, but it also kept me in the room. When they called action, the air changed. The silence in the studio thickened, too complete. Like sound itself had been warned to stay away. A chill rolled down the back of my neck. Even though the lights above were sweltering, the set looked simple. A sagging blanket fort assembled from old chairs, frayed quilts, and dusty couch cushions. A child's domain, built for comfort, safety. But something about it was wrong. The way the shadows pulled under the blankets, the way the light refused to touch the far corners. It looked like my memory of the fort, but refracted, as if remembered by something that didn't quite understand love. 2 boys sat cross-legged inside, one older, one younger. The older one pushed forward a chip plate with 3 dinosaur-shaped sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly, crushed trimmed poorly. In mere today I remembered vividly. It had been warm, human, kind. This wasn't.
"Eat,"
the older boy said. His voice wasn't cruel. It wasn't anything. It was hollow, like something speaking through him, the kind of voice that doesn't come from the lungs but from behind the eyes. The younger boy reached, hesitating. He picked up one of the sandwiches, a stegosaurus, bit into it. He winced. Crack. Something shimmered in the jelly, clear, sharp. The boy coughed and spat into his palm, a shard of glass, stained red. I jolted forward, but didn't move. Was it real? No one shouted cut, no one flinched. The crew stood still, watching, unblinking, reverent. The older boy leaned in, his voice a whisper. "Keep eating. You're having pain for lunch. If you don't eat them, they'll eat your soul." My heart stopped. This felt so wrong, so why didn't I stop it? I looked around. One of the executives stood behind the camera, smiling thinly, hands folded like a priest at a ritual. His eyes never blinked. "What is this?" I whispered, but no one answered. I turned back to the monitor. The boy chewed another bite, trembling. Blood pooled along his gums. The older one sat stiff, eyes dark, unwavering. They weren't just acting, they were obeying. Like their movements had been pulled from a string strung across centuries, like they had stepped into something old, something that used people the way a violin uses strings. The set hummed, not audibly, but deep down in the bones. A vibration, a tension. The air felt aware. I should have shouted, I should have pulled them out. Instead, I whispered, "Keep rolling," because something in me wanted to see. Something ancient, quiet, and buried had begun to rise. A very strange feeling I couldn't resist. Curiosity, hunger, worship, true dedication to the art? I didn't know. I only knew that I couldn't stop watching, no matter how wrong it felt. When the scene ended, no one applauded, no one exhaled. The boys left the set in silence, eyes unfocused, steps soft as sleepwalkers. Staff came in and cleaned up what must have been fake blood. Surely they hadn't made the child eat actual glass. Children couldn't agree to something like this, nor would they. A lie I told myself to justify continuing. Yet my heart was pounding, ears ringing, knowing I'd crossed some invisible threshold. One of the producers clapped me on the back.
"You made something real today,"
he whispered.
"That's rare. Hold on to that."
His hand lingered for a moment too long. I wanted to vomit. Instead, I nodded. That night, I sat awake until morning, role-playing every detail, every line. I told myself what I had seen was wrong, that it hadn't been acting, but something entirely different, something deeply wrong. But a voice inside me whispered something else. You didn't stop it, you directed it, and part of you felt alive. On the fourth day, we were all called into yet another assembly. They called it a creative alignment circle. No one warned me. The entire staff was herded into a wide, soundless studio space, one of the older ones with ceilings that stretched into shadow and walls that looked vaguely burned. There was a faint metallic smell in the air, not blood, not quite, but something adjacent. The lights overhead buzzed in rhythmic pulses, like a heartbeat gone wrong. We sat cross-legged in a ring of mismatched chairs. No cameras, no phones, just silence and expectation. At the center stood one of the executives. It was the same man with the too smooth face, like his expression had been carved into place and then polished until no emotion could stick. He spoke slowly, in a tone so even it felt inhuman.
"Art lives in vulnerability,"
he said.
"True art is not safe. It is not gentle. It is not filtered through ego, or fear, or comfort. If you have come here to create safety, you have come to the wrong place. If you wish to have your dreams and desires fulfilled, you must push yourself together. You must be worthy. We know you are all here because you are missing something, but nothing worth having ever comes easy."
Then he smiled, not warmly. He pointed to a young man across from me. It was one of the camera techs, barely more than a kid.
"Stand."
The tech stood, trembling slightly.
"Who do you think is failing the art? Who here doesn't show true dedication?"
The boy looked confused, then terrified. He tried to stammer something out, but the executive cut him off.
"Point to them."
The room tensed. Slowly, the boy lifted his hand and gestured toward a woman sitting beside me. It was a production designer I'd shared lunch with on the first day. She didn't want to redesign the set for the stillborn baby scene," he mumbled. "Said it was exploitative, that it felt wrong." The woman's jaw clenched. Her eyes glinted with fury. She stood without being asked and snapped back, voice cold.
"And you filmed it without flinching, like it turned you on."
I felt discomfort in my entire body. The circle gasped. Some laughed. The executive clapped once. Loud.
"Good. More,"
the executive said coldly. And like that, the room turned. They called it feedback, but it was flaying. Every word was sharpened, each critique cut with surgical cruelty. I watched soft-spoken costume designers eviscerate interns for cowardice. Editors accuse actors of vanity. Someone called the director's trauma scene, quote, emotionally flaccid, end quote. It was pure psychological carnage. And when it was my turn, I was ready to lie. I was ready to say something surface level, diplomatic. But I felt eyes on me, not just the executives, something else, watching through them. Some sort of presence that had loomed since the first day I set foot in this place. I pointed to a middle-aged man with a quiet, scholarly demeanor. "He hesitates before every take," I said, like he's scared of what might happen if the scene gets too real. "I don't think he has it in him. He's too soft." He flinched, but nodded. A tear slid down his cheek. The circle moved on. I hated how good it felt, how pure, like a poison finally leaving my bloodstream. But as the exercise ended, I noticed something. No one had left the circle unscathed. Even those who delivered the harshest critiques had been wounded. There was no triumph, only thinning skin. I myself had been torn to shreds, but it only left a feeling in me that I could do better, like some unseen force had taken over, driving me onward towards perfection. When the executive dismissed us, his final words rang out like a benediction and a curse.
Remember, creation and destruction are two sides of the same coin. Your deepest desires may turn out to be hollow in the face of what lies beyond the threshold of your imagination.
On the 5th day, they asked me to act.
Something small, just you this time,
said one of the producers that morning. Her lipstick too red, her teeth too white, her voice too calm, like she'd practiced sounding human in front of a mirror.
A piece about silence,
she said.
A man confronting the absence of sound in the face of unspeakable terror.
It sounded like nonsense, but so had everything else. So I nodded, because nodding was easier than asking questions. They called it Scene 47, The Vow. No script, just a costume that wasn't a costume. A hoodie I hadn't worn since high school. My old sneakers, same scuffs, same broken lace. These weren't replicas. These were mine. I stopped wondering how on earth they knew about my private memories at that point. I was increasingly under some kind of trance-like state that activated as soon as I set foot in the studio. The set was a clearing in the woods, a near-perfect replica of the spot Jeremy and I used to escape to when home became too loud. We called it, quote, base camp, end quote. The smell was exact. Pine, wet leaves, and distant wood smoke. The kind of sensory accuracy no budget could buy. The trees, though, were wrong. Too orderly, too still. For the dying light, that orange, late autumn sun slanting through the branches, that was real, or it felt real enough. No one else was there, just me, a replica of my old BMX. Then a voice from somewhere unseen crackled through.
Just be in the moment, let it come back. Say what you said that day. Remember what he told you.
And I did. Jeremy is 18 and about to leave for college. One last ride to the woods. No dares, no jokes. Just quiet. A shifting silence that would now forever mark the beginning of the end, when everything changed. I'd asked him, voice trembling, "You'll still come back, right?" And he'd laughed, pointed to the clearing. "I'll always be here, idiot, right here. You come back, and I'll find you." It was one of the last happy moments we shared. Pure, untouched. But what stepped from the trees wasn't Jeremy. It looked like him. The same gait, same cocky half-smile, but off somehow. His eyes were too still. His smile stayed too long, like it was pinned in place. He didn't blink. He sat beside me, like Jeremy had, like the memory wanted him to. Actor, as Jeremy, you know you can't stay here forever. Me, hesitating. What? Actor, you keep coming back to this place, hoping to find something that's already rotted. My pulse spiked. That wasn't a line. That wasn't even close. But I didn't stop, because I couldn't. The trees leaned in, the shadows around the clearing deepened, teeth hidden in the bark, the air itself buzzed, electric and wrong. Me, you said you'd always be here. Actor, and I am. He grinned, something cracked behind his teeth. You just didn't know what it would cost. He reached down. I shuddered as he touched me. His hand was cold, not death cold, but something other, ancient and hungry, pretending to be familiar. Tears slid down my face, not on cue, not for performance. The hidden voice returned, whispering through the branches.
Good, that's it. Let it hurt. Let it bleed.
And I did. The camera spun, unseen. The trees trembled with a low, droning hum like the clearing had lungs, like the set itself was watching. Birdsong warped into low, mumbling voices, language stripped of meaning, feelings laid bare. Give it all. Bleed it for the frame. Show me you are worthy. At that moment, I didn't just understand it. I felt it. Deep within me, it was never about performance, it was about sacrifice. We were all sacrificing part of ourselves for something much grander than us. In the following months, I increasingly lost my sense of time. The days seemed to float together as I continued my work at the studio. One day, out of the blue, one of the executives pulled me aside. He wore the usual mask they all did, his face too smooth, smile too exact, like it had been rehearsed or printed. His eyes, though, shimmered like oil on water, empty but hiding something immense beneath the surface, a small glimmer of something beyond this world. "You're ready," he said. "Ready for what?" I asked. He didn't answer, just led me through a hallway I'd never seen, though I'd walked this building 100 times. The wall seemed to bend subtly the further we went, as if the architecture itself was trying to correct for a truth too heavy to hold. He stopped at a false wall behind the green room, placed his palm against it. A door revealed itself with a hiss of warm air. He turned to me and said, softly, "You've given enough to earn a glimpse. Do be respectful when you are in there. He watches and he judges. Sometimes he offers you a choice." Then he stepped aside. I went in alone. The stairwell wound down in a tight spiral, each step slick with condensation. The light bulbs overhead twitched violently, buzzing with panic. At the bottom, a black door, unmarked, unblocked. As I stepped through, the air grew thick and metallic, sweet almost, like burnt sugar rotting on a stove with undertones of rust, mildew, and decayed paper. A single bulb swung faintly from the ceiling, casting a jaundiced flicker. At first, it looked like a prop room complete with cluttered shelves, unlabeled boxes, and scattered debris, but nothing felt fake. No paint, no foam, no signs that these items were ever meant for a set. A child's red shoe sat on a shelf, caked in dried mud. Beside it, a teddy bear with a worn ear slumped forward like it had been crying. A cracked pair of glasses lay atop a dust-covered book. I stepped in. The floor groaned. More objects appeared in the light. A broken necklace tangled with hair, a coat draped over a chair like someone had just stepped out, a shattered phone still pulsing with a missed call. No labels, no order, just loss. At the back, a cork board stretched across the wall pinned with dozens of photos, faces, but not actors, men, women, children, some smiling, some crying, some afraid. A few had notes beneath them, gave everything a spectacle, pushed further than expected, did not finish the scene. This was a reliquary, a graveyard. These weren't props, but rather remnants. Belongings which had been salvaged not for use, but because they had been offered, sacrificed. In the corner, a dusty CRT television crackled to life, static, then a loop. A young man fully clothed in a bathtub rocking back and forth. I turned up the sound.
Cut when I've given. Cut when I've given it all. Cut when I'm empty.
Over and over. I backed away, breath shallow. This was where they kept what was left behind. Discarded lives, trimmed truth, memory shaved off like celluloid scraps. The place seemed less like a room and more like a cavern, impossible in size. Velvet curtains hung like flayed skin, their fibers heavy with old blood. The smell was a sick symphony of wax, mold, sweat, and decay, pain made manifest. Display cases lined the walls, each housing something that once belonged to someone who no longer could, who had given all there was to give. A rusted tiara splattered with blood, a ballet slipper, split and soaked. Jars sat on pedestals, teeth, nails, torn bits of script. One held an eyeball still tethered to an optic nerve, coiled like an old film roll. There were sketches scattered like offering storyboards of torment, diagrams for devices that blurred the line between surgery and performance art, scribbled notes on pain threshold, ink streak questions scrawled into every margin. Is fear stronger than grief? How many takes before the soul fractures? Do screams sound better in mono or stereo? And then I saw it, as I made my way further into the room, a shrine. But that word, shrine, it felt blasphemy, inadequate. What stood before me was a towering and terrifying idol. It stood 10 feet tall, yet somehow seemed to loom infinitely higher, as though the ceiling bent away in fear of its presence. hunched but not from weakness, its spine twisted like overloaded film reels melted into bone as if bound beneath the weight of countless confessions, endless agony, and voyeuristic worship. Its body was a grotesque cathedral of flesh and film equipment, ribs stitched from rusted copper, vertebrae spliced with reels of decaying film stock that twitched and unfurled like nervous intestines. Celluloid strips ran through its torso, flashing with flickers of impossible memories of torment. Pale, screaming faces flickered and twitched inside them like trapped souls. Its face was no face, only a shifting vortex of frozen mouths caught mid-howl, their teeth worn flat from endless gnashing. Cracked lenses nested where eyes should be, grinding against each other with the sharp crunch of shattered glass. You didn't see your reflection in them. You saw what you refused to admit. Something broken. A lingering soul-crushed scream looped around in the air on repeat as if it had always been there. The idol's arms stretched wide in something between embrace and crucifixion. In one hand it held a handheld camera, black, antique, and quietly humming like a thing alive. In the other, a paintbrush, tipped with what might have been bone marrow or gray matter, still wet, still twitching. Wound around its waist like a priest's robe was a belt of audio cables and human debris, clumps of tangled hair, shattered teeth, tendons dried into ribbon, and dried up entrails cured into cords. Each fragment hummed faintly as if trying to scream through the static. At its feet, an altar, not built, but grown, out of equipment, out of parts. Monitors like blank eyes, microphones like blackened tongues. Fresh blood slicked the altar's top, still warm. Ash drifted down in flakes like burned celluloid snow. And below it, a rusted plaque read, Obscura, Saint of the Endless Take, God of Voyeurism, Patron of the Eternal Playback. He who captures your raw, screaming soul frame by frame, he who plays it back forever. Its presence was not seen, but felt, like a migraine behind your thoughts, a pressure in your spine, a sense that your life was no longer linear, but looping, shot from multiple angles. And as you stared into its lens, you realized with soul-curdling certainty it had always been filming. Even before you were born, even after you're gone, behind me, the door groaned shut, the lock clicked like a throat closing, and then the voices came, looping around me, running up my spine. This is where the raw becomes sacred. This is where the audience ends. This is where the story bleeds. My knees buckled because I finally understood what that studio was. Not a place for making movies, but a place for offering them, to satisfy that thing, Obscura. The executives, the people running this place, all the actors, they were all under its spell. I knelt before it. The words echoed through my mind. He who grants the worthy their most burning desires. I don't know how long I knelt before the altar. Seconds, minutes, hours. Time had gone elastic here. It was pulling, looping, fraying at the edges. The flickering monitor showed fragments of my life overexposed and stuttering like dying moments. But just then, the air buckled. The Obscura stood, not flickered, not hunched, but finally risen. It unfolded like a collapsed cathedral dragged upright by unseen hands. The film stock tendons along its spine snapped taut. The lenses in its face spun wildly, projecting impossible constellations of grief and memory across the altar room. Each step it took pulsed in my chest like a drumbeat made from my own blood. And then it spoke, but not with words, with images. With scenes burned into my skull faster than I could process, deeper than I could unsee. Jeremy, my brother, 16, sunlight in his hair, the camcorder wobbling in his hands as he laughed through a line we'd rehearsed 100 times. He wore a crumpled paper crown from the grocery store, brandishing a plastic sword like it was Excalibur. His grin was wide, unstoppable, so real I could almost hear the tiny click of the record button, the whir of the tape. Then the reel snapped forward. Jeremy at 19, the crown gone, the sword gone. Just him, slouched at the foot of his bed where the curtains never opened, the light never reached. his skin pale with the kind of exhaustion no sleep could cure, his eyes, hollow, rimmed red, fixed on nothing. Obscura's voice came next, 1,000 voices in one. Studio executives, dead actors, critics, damned souls, my own voice cut and layered and pitched through rusted audio filters.
You want to bring him back.
My mouth was dry. I couldn't speak.
You want to rewrite the scene, to go back before the fall, before the tightening of the rope, before the cut.
It stepped closer, lenses narrowing.
You can.
A new screen blinked to life. Jeremy alive. Not a memory, not a hallucination. Real. He looked older, 27 maybe. A quiet light behind his eyes. Laughing, whole. Sitting with me on the porch, talking about our old home movies, the movies we'd stopped making. Obscura's voice cut through and interrupted the memory that never happened.
But some stories take sacrifice.
A second screen lit. It was me, standing on a stage. Oscar in hands, critics weeping, students quoting my name like scripture, a filmography stacked sky high, immortal, known, remembered. Obscura raised a hand. In his palm, a coiled strip of my life yet to be lived. One real, but split in two. And I understood. Two paths. Jeremy, alive, here, now. But my fire, the passion I had, was extinguished forever. I would never finish another screenplay, never feel that raw hunger to capture light and shadow again. The stories would be gone, drained from me like blood. I'd be nobody in the industry, a man with love, but no legacy. Or greatness, the pinnacle. Masterpieces etched into time. My work would outlive empires. I would find my place among those I admired the most, but Jeremy would remain gone. Final and unfinished. A ghost behind every lens flare. Obscura leaned in, its voice now a whisper of tape unraveling.
Choose.
I shook. Sweat and tears slicked my face. Obscura tilted its head.
Tell me, what do you hunger for more? The perfect scene, or your brother's laugh?
And I broke. I saw the truth. Not just of Obscura, but of myself. For so much of my life, I thought I wanted greatness, legacy. I thought I wanted to shock and awe people. I chased it like a curse. I thought if I could make something lasting, Jeremy's death wouldn't be in vain. But all I really wanted, all I had ever wanted, was one more ordinary moment. A laugh, a shitty movie night, something real. I reached for the reel with Jeremy's face on it. Obscura didn't move. It accepted. As soon as my fingers closed around that reel, the monitors went black, the altar cracked, the celluloid veins in the walls burst into white fire. I screamed as a foreign sensation struck through my body and mind. If I was being sucked dry, I felt the cinema leave me, like a fever breaking. The desire to immortalize, gone. I remembered every frame I had ever dreamed of shooting and watched them dissolve into light. Behind me, Obscura loomed, motionless yet alive. Its towering body of bone, wire, reels, and memory hummed with a low, insatiable hunger. The shrine began to flicker around it. Frames started peeling back like burned celluloid, the set collapsing into negative space. Reality curled at the edges, revealing not brick, not architecture, but raw intention. This was not a room. It never had been. The altar was no table. It was a pupil dilated with longing. The walls weren't walls, but membranes. Thin layers between thought and exposure. The cathedral of stitched flesh and melted film wasn't a monument, but a mask, a disguise, a costume of reverence stretched over something far older, something watching. Obscura, the god of voyeurism, was not born. It had always been a primordial thing that fed not on blood or worship, but on sight, on intimacy, on the terrible vulnerability that comes when pain is made public. It did not crave suffering for suffering's sake, but for what it revealed. The raw, unfiltered truth in the moment before the scream, the flicker in the eyes just before the breakdown. It wanted you to be watched, utterly, completely, in your worst moments. And for those it found worthy, it offered a choice. You could bargain with Obscura, but never without a cause. It could give you what you desired most. It could bring you what was lost, stitch time and fate together like discarded footage, spliced into a new reel. It could rewind your soul, rewrite your story, but only if you offered something in return. Something equally sacred, a dream, a legacy, a future of your own making, because what Obscura hungered for wasn't death, it was narrative. Ahead of me, in the falling dark, a door opened. It wasn't a physical door. There was no creak, no hinges, just a suggestion of a threshold opening. And through it, him, Jeremy. He stepped forward like he'd never left. Same dark mop of hair, same lopsided smile. He wore the hoodie he died in, only now it was unstained, whole again. His hands were shoved deep in the pockets like they always were. He blinked once, slowly, like someone coming out of a dream. "Hey," he said. One syllable, small, unimpressive, but it hit me harder than any award ever could have. For a moment I forgot how to stand. Tears didn't fall so much as collapse from me, sudden and ragged. I ran to him, pulled him into my arms, and he let me, and I felt him again. Warm, solid, there. But not quite. There was something off in the hug. Something in the way his spine arched just a little too straight, the way he didn't shiver, the way his breath hitched, not like a person catching emotion, but like a reel skipping behind a scene. He pulled back slightly. His eyes met mine, same brown, but deeper, like endless tunnels with only a suggestion of light at the end of them. And for a heartbeat, his smile twitched to the edges, as if unsure which direction it should go. Left, right, grief, joy. I wanted to ask, "Is it really you?" But the words stuck, hung in the throat like a scream never cued. Instead, he said, "I feel like I slept for years. Oliver, can we just go home and watch a movie?" And that was enough. That was all I needed. We left the shrine behind, or maybe it let us go. The corridors bent backward into themselves, the flickering film light bleeding into silence. I felt something behind me collapse, not like a structure, but like a roll, ending. Obscura made no sound, no final statement, no exit cue, just a soft click of a shutter closing. We moved far from the city. I took a quiet job in a hardware store. Jeremy works from home. He says he does tech support. He keeps the curtains drawn, and sometimes I catch him muttering to himself in the dark, recording something, replaying something. Some nights I hear his laughter echo from the basement. It's his, mostly, but once or twice, it stutters, warps, like it's being dubbed from a damaged tape. And his smile, it always lingers for a second too long. I know he's not all the way back, maybe not even halfway, but he remembers my birthday. He hums the tunes we used to love when he thinks I'm not listening. And he still calls me director, the way he used to when we were kids. That counts for something, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Sometimes I think about what I gave up, the films I'll never make, the masterpiece that will never be written, the name I'll never carve into history's spine. I was meant to be remembered, but I traded it away. For this, for him, or for something that remembers being him. And maybe that's the most terrifying part. I'm okay with it, because I've come to understand something about the camera, about the lens. It doesn't just record, it creates. It finds what you love the most, and then it asks you what you'd give to see it again, to feel it again, next to you. Even if it's a copy, even if it isn't the original. And you accept, because you so desperately want to hold on to that distant thing that used to be. Those times you'll never get back. What a story. So this is gonna be one of the few and only times that I record the outro after editing the story. I had one recorded after I read the story like usual, but like I said in a previous outro, I don't really, especially when the story's long, I don't remember half the things I planned on saying while I was reading the story by the time I get to the end of it. So for this story, since I respect Simon and he sent this story to me and he's been such a great guy and his stories have been so amazing and good, I wanted to go ahead and just re-record the outro to have some more of the thoughts that I completely missed when I first recorded it. The first thing is that the beginning of the story, not being able to find a job, sending out applications like a flare in the night, he said, that was super hit home. Experiencing that right now, and I know a lot of people also are experiencing that right now. The economy is kind of a mess, and it's not a great time, in America at least. If you're somewhere else in the world, maybe it's a little better, I'm not sure. But that was definitely relatable, very well written. This was definitely a good way to tell a tragedy of a character. A lot of times, let's take stories from 02321, for example, the Cryptid Delivery Man, the, how would you say, or not how would you say, what are the other story names? Other story names, the one about the cryptid in the forest, the one about the PI, the one of, etc. All the ones that I've done from Zero has, usually the characters have some really problems that the main character has something that happened to them in the past, and we learn about that slowly through the story, but it comes to a hedge at some point, it really fully unfolds, and it's shown to you in some manner of breakdown, at some point near the third quarter of the story. For this story, we slowly went over the character's tragedy at each point of the story. We learned what happened pretty early on. We learned just the general what happened halfway through. First, it was his brother just died, and then we figured out how his brother died, and that's usually the meat of it. But then Simon did a great job of carrying that on and showing some memories, showing some things that happened, and really making that loss impactful, adding good memories, and as he said, perverting them. And I thought this was a really interesting way to tell a tragedy. In all honesty, I did while I was reading the story, I thought that maybe, just maybe, why, the reasoning for having people go through all of their trauma again would be for helping them process it, come to terms with it, and it would because I wasn't sure exactly where the story was going to go with the main character's tragedy, and if it was something that held him down constantly or not. But I did sort of hope for a happy ending in a different way than the ending here, which I'm not sure if that's happy or not happy. It's up to interpretation. There was a decision made by me for, do I want to read the script lines with character voices or not with character voices? I decided not to do character voices, partly from laziness, partly just because that's what I felt. It didn't have quotes around it. Did it? I don't remember. I don't think it had quotes around it. If it did, then it was a script. There was colons. It was a script line. So I just read it with a slightly different enunciation than the general reading. So hopefully there was only one scene, the scene with the I think it was the glass PB&J. That one was the most confusing one, probably, because I think it flipped between the two a little bit. So yeah, that was also, in terms of some of the sound effects I didn't add because it sounded like he was genuinely retelling rather than experiencing. So the things that sounded like he was experiencing, I tried to add the sounds, and the things that it sounds like he was talking about in way more past tense, I didn't really add the sounds. So yeah, thank you to Simon for being a really, really great writer. He mentioned a while ago, or after the last story, this is the author of It Screams When It Doesn't Whisper. I think that he wrote Bright Yellow Terror. I'm pretty sure he wrote Bright Yellow Terror. And also, most recently, oh man, how did I forget this? Oh yeah, The Temple of Screaming Flesh. I really liked that one. I knew I liked it, so I'm it was one of my favorite stories. So yeah, he's written all of those, and he sent this one to me on a whim, close to Halloween. It's not close to Halloween anymore, but Simon's a great writer. He did say that he's going to be working on some personal projects, a little bit of a longer personal project, so he probably won't have many creepypasta stories out, so we may not see one from him again soon. But I'm really glad that he sent this over to me, and he sent other stories over to me, and that's always something super kind. Whenever an author does that, I have no entitlement to any of their stories, so it, comes from a place of, they probably liked my narration, and, that's great. I do my best for these, and I do try to maintain a pretty high level of quality. I think I'm definitely one of the best narrators in the niche, regardless of what my views say. But yeah, I do my best, and then also just it's a kindness, definitely a kindness from the author to send me a story. It's, you know, like I said, I'm not entitled to any of them. They could definitely like go over to the Dark Somnium, go over to Vidith, and make a lot more money, because they can sell the stories to bigger narrators. So it's always really, really nice when they offer me to read sequels or other stories that they've written. And yeah, Simon's always been a nice guy through our correspondences. There was one line that stuck out to me, and for some reason I remembered it, or it stuck out while I was reading, and it stuck out while I was editing. I just now finished editing the story. I immediately started recording this afterwards. But I, for some reason, cannot for the life of me remember what the line is now. So even though I wrote a couple notes down for things to say in this outro, I didn't write that down. So my bad. Also, I didn't set up any soundproofing. If you can hear my open window because it's hot, or if you can hear my PC fans, sorry about that. But yeah, thank you all so much for listening. Let me know what you thought about. Oh, the last thing I wanted to talk about was the ending. And the decision that he made. For some reason, I didn't put this in my notes either. But for the main character at the end, my question would be: is he saw two worlds, and the world with his brother, the one that he chose, his brother's a little off. It's not exactly a perfect replica. It's a replica, which is in itself inherently flawed compared to the real thing. And then my question would be, is the other life, the one where he became a famous film director, was that like his natural progression in life? Like if nothing changed, if he decided to just walk out of there and not pick any of the film roles and just go live the rest of his life, was that the natural course of the rest of his life? Or was that also a chosen course? Would that also have some sort of strings attached? In the circumstance that it was just the natural course of his life, I actually don't agree with his decision. I know that loss is painful. I know that loss is a really terrible, awful thing, and there's a lot of people that everyone wants to bring back. But I also think it's part of life, unfortunate as it is, and sometimes people do die in untimely manners, and you may want to bring them back. But again, unfortunately, it is a facet of life. We can't bring them back. And for the main character, I think that getting help and seeking help and grieving and getting through everything, having a shell of someone rather than having that person, it feels a lot more painful in the long run versus, he could have had personal success, a dream that I'm sure that his brother from the afterlife, maybe if you believe in that, would have been proud to see. But I don't think that attempting to bring back the dead would ever be a good idea. And in this case, it seems, up to interpretation, however you want to take it. Which, again, leave that in the comments. How you take this, how you felt about the ending, what would you do in this situation. And yeah, again, I still can't remember that line that stuck out, but it stuck out. Darn it. But anyways, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all for listening to this probably kind of long outro. And thank you, Simon, if you're listening to this, if you've gotten this far, for sending me the story. And I hope that your personal novel project goes really super well. And thank you again for sending me the story. Thank every one of you for listening, especially if you got all the way this far to the end. Leave a squirrel emoji in the comments if you got this far. But yeah, thank you all again for listening. I'll see you in the next one. Ego Volt Animasnarrations.